Hey everybody, it's Dr. Mark Hyman. How you doing? I am excited to talk to you today about one of my favorite topics, which is muscle and why it's so important for longevity, for health, for function, and to talk about it because I've written a lot about it in my new book called Young Forever, coming out in February, about how to stay healthy and keep your health span equal to your lifespan. So why is muscle so important? We're going to find out today from two experts who are incredibly knowledgeable in this field. One is Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, who's a good friend, a functional medicine doc, who's steeped in the science of muscle in her undergraduate degree as a doctor and in her postgraduate work, studied with some of the world's experts in muscle health. And also another amazing nutritionist dietitian who works with the Philadelphia 76ers, who's their team physician, Dr. Lemmy Warner. We're going to try to get her on as well. So let's see if we can get you guys on. This is always a little tricky. Okay. Gabrielle is, oh, there she is. Thank God we got it working. Okay, fantastic.
What's up, my friend? How are you?
Hi, good. I'm great. I'm fantastic. So glad to be doing this with you, and we'll have a deep talk. You got a little background noise on your side. I don't know if it's me or you, but it seems like there's, no?
No, I'm in a very quiet office, so hopefully not.
Okay, well, good. I think we should get started. We'll invite Emily in a little bit. I want to talk to you about muscle. It's your favorite topic. I know we've been talking about this for what seems like a decade now.
It has been a decade, which is hilarious.
I'm like, what? Okay.
So muscle is my favorite topic. Between muscle and protein and possibly my kids, I couldn't think of anything more that I'd love to talk about.
That's right, Yeah, we started all this way before you even had kids. So.
This is true. So we'll put those in later. And I really love that you're bringing attention to muscle because muscle is the most important organ in the body. Oftentimes when we think about muscle, we think about fitness, and that is so critical. But the really exceptional component to muscle is everything that it does for health and wellness. And we know that our survivability is really determined about how our muscle health is.
It's true. And I think, you just said something that I think most doctors would not even think is true, which is that muscle is an organ. Like, what do you mean it's an organ? Your liver is an organ, your kidney's an organ, but how is your muscle an organ? So, you think it's just there to contract and make you move and walk and do all this stuff, but why is it so important to health? Why is it important to aging? Why should we care so much about muscle other than, looking good at the beach?
Which is also important. Well, muscle, despite what people think, again, as we just related to fitness, is actually an endocrine organ. What that means is when you contract skeletal muscle, say, for example, through exercise, which is your primary way of really focused contraction, it secretes proteins. It secretes myokines that actually travel throughout the body and have really, really important and generous impacts on all things like brain function. It also relates to how you utilize nutrients. Even in things like chronic inflammatory diseases, skeletal muscle, when it secretes these myokines, which again are simply proteins, it counterbalances the immune system. In fact, there's a potential for muscle to be used for autoimmune rheumatic diseays. It's that critical.
It's amazing. I know I've really kind of ignored my muscle for most of my life.
You guys all heard it here first. Mark has ignored his muscle for years.
And I thought yoga was good and playing tennis and biking, and it definitely kept me fit. But I really started getting deeper into building my own muscle, and I've noticed just some dramatic changes in my overall well-being, in how I feel, and so many on my metabolic factors by focusing on muscle. So I think it really is this organ that we have to pay attention to. And actually, as I sort of researched my book on aging, the most important thing that determines your longevity and your health as you get older and your function is the quality and health and amount of your muscle.
Yeah. And it's interesting. We all age, and we have to plan for that aging capacity. We have to plan for the times where perhaps we get sick and we're unable to train. And when you are young, muscle, you're able to, build and maintain health of muscle much easier than you are when you age. And, you mentioned something that I think is really important to point out is a lot of people really focus on cardiovascular activity, which is critical. It's critical for mitochondria function. I know that we're going to talk about Urolithin A, which is an amazing compound. It's almost like endurance exercise in a jar, but not quite. But it has that metabolic potentiality. And when we think about muscle, oftentimes we think about going for a jog or playing tennis, you do yoga. The other aspect about muscle is really being able to focus on strength and hypertrophy and thinking about what is the quality of the health that we want to lead. Do we want to be strong as we age? Do we want to be fit and have muscle? Like you mentioned earlier, is that the healthier our muscle, the more likely we are to survive against any disease.
Yeah.
What other statement can we say that the fitter you are, the more likely you will survive anything? Very rare in medicine to give an absolute.
Yeah, so let's talk about why muscle is so important.
Yeah.
And I think one of the key reasons is yes, it's an endocrine organ. It regulates our immune system, inflammation, and our metabolism in so many ways. But mitochondria is really the key here. And mitochondria is this little thing in your cells that makes energy from food and breathing and oxygen. And as we get older, they become more dysfunctional. We get less of them. And that decline, the loss of energy, I mean, when you run out of gas, you die. So the key is that your muscle is the sort of place where you have the most mitochondria. Yes, your brain and heart have the most number per cell, but your muscle is really where that's going on. And that's something you have to learn how to deal with. It's protect, to create, and to improve the function of your mitochondria throughout your life and as you get older. So talk about mitochondria and metabolism and the energy process in there.
Absolutely. One of the most important things that you just said is that muscle really houses the majority of our mitochondria simply based on the sheer size of muscle. So an average person has about 40% skeletal muscle mass in their body. As we age, that declines. Now, one of the reasons, as you pointed out, in terms of mitochondria function, why muscle is so important is that it is the primary site for glucose disposal and glucose utilization. Glucose, as the watcher knows or the listener knows, is carbohydrates. And a lot of these metabolic diseases come from overconsumption of calories. So when you have healthy muscle and you have healthy mitochondria, you have a place to utilize and dispose of glucose. So when we think about diseases of aging and even obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, diseases that are metabolic in nature, begin in skeletal muscle, in my opinion, and also insulin resistance. So the healthier your mitochondria, the healthier your muscle, the overall vitality you're going to have. And also, you mentioned energy. When people get older, and I'm a trained geriatrician, and when people get older, one of the things that they always mention is, I'm more tired. And of course, this can be for a multitude of reasons, but we do know that sarcopenia, which is a decrease in muscle mass, function, and overall capacity happens. And that is really one of the hallmarks of aging. And within that comes mitochondrial dysfunction.
Yeah, so sarcopenia means less muscle, and that means
and
less,
not strong, right? Not
strong muscle, yeah.
Yeah.
And that really is driving all these diseases that are metabolic diseases of aging that are driven by insulin resistance. And so the best way to fix that is to fix your muscle. So, yes, we need to exercise and strength train. We need to eat more protein, and we're going to have you on the podcast to talk about that. I want to talk about, kind of this interesting phenomena that happens with plants. And I think I've sort of been researching a lot about aging and this concept of phytohormesis, which are plant compounds that our body uses to upregulate various systems in our body for health. And one of the interesting things is this research that's come out about this pomegranate derivative, and this compound is found in other plants, but it has to be metabolized by your microbiome and converted into this compound called Urolithin A that then has all these amazing actions that I want you to explain. And the thing about it is that most of us have really crappy microbiomes because of our Western diet and our antibiotics. And so it's really challenging for people to think about how they get to improve their microbiome. And yes, that's an important part of what we do in functional medicine. But many people can't produce this compound. So tell us about Urolithin A, how it works, why it's important, what it does, what the science says about it. Because there's a fair bit of research on this published in Nature and Cell and JAMA.
Cell, yeah.
Very big journals. It's not like a kind of a wacky sort of, take this supplement, you can, get it at your local drugstore and it's going to save your life. It's kind of a lot of science behind this.
Yeah, I've heard about Urolithin A quite a few years ago, and it's a compound that I'm very, very interested in. And, you said something also that is important in terms of our microbiome and this kind of plant hormesis or this phytohormesis. And the compound, well, number one, just to lay the foundation, is that we have to take every advantage that we can. So it is strength training, calorie restriction, and then compounds that we can utilize to really help our mitochondria when and if possible. And I do believe that this also has these plant kind of compounds, like you had mentioned, which is Urolithin A. The body, it's a compound that comes from pomegranates, walnuts, raspberries. It has the potential to be, you think about that deep, rich color, the prebiotic. And the reality is we cannot consume enough of it, and the majority of us, almost 50% of us, don't have the capacity to generate this.
Yeah.
That is why supplementation is very important for Urolithin A. And so what does the science say about Urolithin A? Well, as with all good supplements and all good concepts, it starts with mechanism. Mechanism starts in C. elegans and then rodents, and then ultimately moves over to humans, which Urolithin A actually has randomized controlled trials in terms of what did it look like. It looked like my favorite population, older adults, and it looked at strength, HSCRP, which is an inflammatory marker. It's one of the markers that we look at, that we tend to see go up in aging and metabolic dysfunction, and endurance. And of course, they looked at mitochondria, which the average person, although there is a way to do it, isn't necessarily looking at. And what they found is that when individuals took 500 milligrams up to 1,000 milligrams of Urolithin A, they saw improvements of strength and endurance. And that's incredible. And the reason why that's incredible is because... So
it's like exercise in a pill, almost, is what you're saying, without exercise.
Yeah, but what's so amazing about this concept and the potentiality of this compound that, number one, it's bioavailable. So you can actually ingest it in a targeted way that is bioavailable. It is safe, which is huge, and it doesn't interact with medications that we know of. So if an individual is older, we're not looking at polypharmacy here, which is really important. The other thing that's really important about Urolithin A, again, as this compound that individuals cannot make, is that it improves mitochondrial function, and here's how. It's through mitophagy. We've all heard of autophagy, which is essentially the body's way of cleaning out itself. And as we age, the processes of autophagy and mitophagy, which is really the cleaning out of mitochondria, decrease.
Yeah.
So here is a substance that has the potential, again, it's beginning to gain a foundation of evidence, which is important in multiple different groups that point to this compound that improves mitophagy. So now you combine improved mitophagy through Urolithin A plus exercise.
Yeah.
Now you are looking at ways in which you can stave off disease and use exercise combined with this compound to potentially treat and improve disease states.
Yeah, I mean, I take it after I work out every time. So it's like been a staple for me for a while.
So
and
I'm actually on 1,000 milligrams. So I take 1,000 milligrams a day.
Amazing, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I want to invite Emily Warner, who's a nutrition dietitian, who's a team physician for the Philadelphia 76ers, who's focused on sports nutrition. She's a PhD in exercise physiology, and I want her to come on and there's some questions from the community that she could sort of bring to us. Hopefully we can get this to work. If not, we'll just kind of finish this. But let's see, I just accepted your request, Emily. Hopefully you can get on, and also send you a request, if that works. Okay, great. All right, there we are. Oh my God, it works. Hallelujah. For all the technology we have, sometimes it just doesn't work, but you got it. So Emily, welcome. Thank you so much. I think I like the Sixers. I miss Allen Iverson. You know, he was that short little guy who was just crushed it on the Sixers for so many years. But anyway, I'm excited to have you, and I want you to sort of maybe bring up some of the questions that people have from the community that you've gathered that help us sort of dive deeper into what people are really thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you first for having me. It's really nice to meet both of you. So some of the questions that we got from the audience, a lot of really, really good question. The first one that I think would be important to address is how can we impact cellular aging, just through everyday life type things. So for me, I think that exactly as Dr. Lyon spoke to, addressing diet, addressing exercise, and then these supplements, which I see it in kind of that tiered way. Supplements should be supplemental to everything else. And as I was following along with your conversation, speaking about Urolithin A, I think it's really this novel compound that complements both of those other things. It is a postbiotic, so it is a dietary nutrient, and then it also has similar effects to how exercise can benefit our mitochondria as well.
Amazing. Do you want to answer that?
Yeah. Go ahead, Dan. Yeah.
Gabrielle, do you want to?
Oh, sorry, it's a little bit delayed.
So, Emily, why don't you repeat your question?
The question was, how can we, the top tip for maintaining cellular health as we age?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple strategies to do it, and what's very easy for individuals to do is, number one, exercise. And I believe exercise should be all-encompassing. So as Mark and I have gone on very long bike rides up the hills in Lenox, doing some kind of that endurance type activity. Also, some kind of high-intensity interval training to the best of a capacity. And for some people, again, I'm a geriatrician, going from sitting to standing would be a high-intensity activity. And then, of course, resistance training. So there's the exercise piece, and all of those things impact mitochondria to varying degrees or another. And then calorie restriction is important. We are overfed and undernourished as a society. Calorie restriction is very beneficial. And then another thing, and I'll just throw this out there, is, going through periods of time of protein restriction. There's a way in which we can upregulate other aspects of autophagy. So those are the key ways that I think about improving mitochondrial function, very specific targeted ways. And then, of course, utilizing supplementation, specifically the Urolithin A, which is an unusual compound. It is an unusual compound in the way that we see increases in mitochondria function in terms of muscular health and decreases in inflammatory markers like the data shows in the CRP. Very unusual compound. It's very exciting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's a lot of compounds out there that are used in promotion of health and have a lot of claims. They're not often very well backed up. But the science on this is very robust, and I sort of looked at how it increases VO2 max, which is your basically fitness level, and increases muscle mass, muscle function, clears up old mitochondria, reduces inflammation. They did some very interesting kind of metabolomic analysis as a result of some of the studies, and it was just fascinating to see the kind of detail about how this has such broad impacts on our health.
Yeah, I'd like to throw in one more thing, which I think is really valuable, is the potential of Urolithin A will allow people to overcome the threshold of training. So oftentimes in clinical practice, a person they're really exhausted, and so they're not able to put in proper effort that is going to generate an outcome. And I believe that where a great potential for Urolithin A is it'll allow people to, it has the potential to allow people to overcome a particular threshold to be able to put in the activity necessary. And that is really important because a lot of individuals are exercise intolerant.
Yeah. Can you talk more about what does that exercise intolerant mean?
Yeah. Well, when we just think about exercise intolerance, there's a couple things, and this is perhaps not I'm not talking about doing a sit and stand test or a metered walk test or a timed test. So these are not geriatric outcomes or strength outcomes. What I'm talking about is individuals are so deconditioned because of our sedentary lifestyle that they're almost intolerant to be able to put in the necessary effort. For example, I know people that have difficulty walking up a flight of stairs.
Yeah.
And we know that walking up a flight of stairs does not need the 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity. So how do we get people, what can we do to help augment individuals' capacity to be able to put in the work necessary? And I believe that this is a way in which we use this, not just looking at strength outcomes and mitochondria function, but also augmenting people's just innate capacity to help with that health of the mitochondria before they are even exercising, to get to the point where they can put in that effort.
I mean, the truth is that, mitochondria play a role in so many illnesses. The psychiatrist from Harvard has really wrote a book called Brain Energy. About mitochondrial health. So, we think about it in so many ways, but it's really essential to our health. And I think we're going to find out that this compound has broad-reaching effects across the spectrum of age-related disorders. So, Emily, any other questions from the community that we could kind of finish up with?
I think you guys kind of addressed a lot of them. One that really stuck out to me is, what core set of daily supplements do we need that you can't get from nutrition?
Well, I have a big answer to that, but I'd love to hear your view on that, Gabrielle.
Well, I believe that, so there are lots that you can get from nutrition, but Urolithin A is not it's not, so the components like pomegranate juice, it's not that you can't get it from the diet. The capacity to actually generate it is relatively insignificant. And then again, you do have to watch about overall calorie load if you're going to be pounding pomegranate juice like there's no tomorrow. And again, you don't even know if you have the capacity to convert it in the gut. So Urolithin A for sure. And then I always think of a good omega-3, and I always think of, even if you can get magnesium in the diet, oftentimes we're deficient. Vitamin D, even if we get sun, oftentimes we're deficient. So there's a few foundational supplements, and then a prebiotic fiber as well. Mark has known me for over a decade, and I tend to be a low fiber eater just because that's how I roll. So those would be some core recommendations.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'd add to that list probably a good multivitamin and mineral, which covers all the bases. But I do think that some of these plant compounds are going to turn out to be very important, like Urolithin A, things like mycetin from strawberries, and as I was researching my book, this whole array of age-related compounds that help to mitigate a lot of what we call the hallmarks of aging, which we talk about in the book Young Forever. But it's kind of exciting to see how these plants work with us. And I always just kind of revel at the mystery of how we're so connected to nature, and that our bodies somehow know how to use these compounds from plants to upgrade our health. And I think, we don't make everything in our body, like we have to need vitamins and minerals, for example. But I think we don't think of these plant compounds as essential nutrients, but we co-evolve with them, and they are essential for us to not necessarily prevent a deficiency disease, but to create optimal health. So I think that's where Urolithin A comes in. I love the product. I encourage everybody to check it out. If you've been watching and listening, you get a 10% discount. The notes are in the post, so check it out. And thank you both for joining us today. And I'd love to keep the conversation going about muscle and health. It's my favorite new conversation. So thank you, Gabrielle. Thank you, Emily. And we'll see you next time.
Bye. Thanks so much for having me.
Bye, everybody.